MG aims to take on the major makers on equal terms with its most competitive mainstream model yet, the S5 EV. This MG4-based compact electric crossover is a step forward from the brand's previous volume models in almost every way. You might hope for a bit more visual or handling pizzazz, but you can't fault the way the brand has really moved forwards here. My name is Jonathan Crouch. I've been testing cars for over 40 years. You'll find them all on the Car and Driving Car Reviews app. Here, I'm going to try and tell you everything that you really need to know about this car in a way that you'll find nowhere else. Let me hand you over to our presenter, Colin.
MG steps up a gear with this S5 EV, an electric compact crossover for a new era. Here, we'll take a closer look. MG learns quickly. In 2018, its first electric model, the ZS EV, really wasn't very good at all, so feeble in range and poor in build quality that even at its cheap price point, it wasn't tempting. In 2020, the brand dramatically improved that ZS, but the real step forward came with the introduction in 2022 of the MG4 hatch, which really could start to look its competitors in the eye. That model's rear-driven underpinnings appear again in the car we look at here, the MGS5 EV, which adds a more spacious body to that platform to create a replacement for the old ZS EV. The ZS range having gone its own way with hybrid power. It slots in just below the S6 EV in MG's rejuvenated lineup. It's interesting that MG is now differentiating EVs as standalone models, just as some other brands have started going the other way. You'd think that Audi might have a thing or two to say about the name of this one. And this S5 EV is bold in more than just its badging, with pricing edging up to a level just below mainstream rivals, some of whom get the benefit, not available here, of a useful government grant. Can this MG pull that off? Well, you can find out more about this kind of car by downloading the Car and Driving app. But if your interest is specifically in this S5 EV, stay with us for the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. The news that this S5 EV rides on the same rear-driven chassis as the slightly smaller MG4 is encouraging, because that MG4 surprised us by being vastly more engaging than other Chinese small electric crossovers of this size. This is helped, no doubt, by the fact that, unlike most Oriental makers, MG actually takes the trouble to properly tune the handling of its cars for the European market via a UK-based development centre that sits in the shadow of the old MG Marks production sites. As it turns out, the S5 doesn't feel quite as agile as its smaller stablemate, but that's to be expected given that this is a heavier car with a longer wheelbase and a higher roofline. MG says that the S5 EV is the fastest accelerating car in its class, which seems a somewhat pointless accolade considering what kind of class this is. Still, as we saw with the ZS Hybrid Plus SUV, the brand has recently made a habit of providing more power than the class norm, and that trend continues here. The long-range versions you'll probably want, and which is what we're trying here, are propelled by a 231 PS rear-mounted electric motor with 350 Newton meters of torque. That facilitates a 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint in just 6.3 seconds, which in the combustion arena would have been enough to see this car classified in the lower echelons of performance-orientated crossovers. More relevant is that the 64 kilowatt-hour NMC long-range battery takes the car up to 298 miles between charges. There's also a cheaper standard range entry-level variant which has a feebler 170 PS motor with 0 to 62 mile an hour in 8 seconds and uses a 49 kilowatt-hour LFP battery that offers 211 miles between charges. At the other end of the spectrum, it seems unlikely that there will be a battery bigger than 64 kilowatt-hours in size offered in this car. The 77 kilowatt-hour NMC battery fitted to the larger S6 EV, for instance. So, unlike with some rivals, it won't be possible to choose an S5 EV variant with over 300 miles of rated range, which might put some customers off. Ultimate speed was another low priority in S5 EV development. Maximum velocity on all variants is a modest 101 miles an hour, and there certainly won't be a potent dual motor hot hatch flagship variant like the MG4 X-Power. Still, S5 EV owners get lots of drive settings to play with. Normal, sport, comfort and snow driving modes feature. And there's a custom setting for those who want to select their own level of power response: eco, normal and sport, or steering feel, gentle, normal and sport. The drive modes are selectable via this star button on the right hand steering spoke. MG provides another star button on the left wheel spoke for brake regen settings, which is much less intuitive to use for this function than the steering wheel regen paddles found in rivals. The regeneration system settings are low, medium and high, displayed as 1, 2 and 3 on the instrument screen, or adaptive if you want the car to make all the choices for you. Plus there's a screen selectable 1 pedal setting that will almost bring the car to a stop off throttle. We mentioned the steering. Unfortunately, none of its settings deliver a great deal of feel, so you can't really make the most of this car's above average levels of traction and grip. We were surprised to learn that the S5 EV is one of the lighter EVs in its class because it feels quite a heavy, solid thing on first acquaintance, particularly if you set off in one of the more lethargic drive modes. Ride quality is a bit more supple than it is in the MG4, aided by the kind of properly sophisticated multi-link rear axle that still isn't necessarily a given in this segment. Sharper potholes and speed humps, though, can catch it out. The rear-driven format makes the car feel agile in town, where you'll enjoy an impressively tight turning circle. An excellent all-round visibility thanks to the high driving position and low windscreen. There are no silly drivetrain noises, so beyond the city limits you can enjoy excellent powertrain refinement, spoiled on the highway only by a touch of tyre roar. Finally, we're pleased to see that MG's listened to our criticism of over-intrusive ADAS driver assist systems on previous models. Here, these are much easier to turn off. You swipe down on the centre screen, press the MG Pilot custom button, then press again to confirm. Simple. Other brands, particularly other Chinese makers, need to take note. The S5 EV is cleanly, neatly styled, but in no way memorable, despite the inclusion of a split lower front grille inspired by MG's Cyberster sports car. But if you like the idea of an MG4 but need something slightly bigger, the S5 will suit you just fine. At 4,476mm long and 1,633 tall, it's much closer dimensionally to the class norm. A neat crease below the belt line fades out just before the rear door handle, with crossover cues provided as usual by subtle roof rails and black plastic cladding on arches separated by a silver highlighted lower rub strip. Wheel sizes differentiate the two trim levels: black 17-inch rims for the base SE and bicolour 18 inches for this top trophy spec. The front end, with its octagonal MG badge, is in its own way quite distinctive, yet somehow still conservative. Hidden LED headlights below slim daytime running light strips. All the cooling's taken care of by this wide lower intake. The rear features the kind of full-width LED light strip that these days seems obligatory on every new design, and there's a dinky rear wiper, a subtle roof spoiler, and some mildly interesting illuminating tail light graphics. More significant, though, as usual, is what you can't see. Not just the rear-driven platform, but also the fact that just over 1.7 tonnes, this car is lighter than most of its competitors. To take just one similarly sized rival as an example, it's difficult to get a Skoda Elroq that weighs less than 2 tonnes. So, neat but unremarkable exterior design. What are we going to be served up inside? Well, in some ways, this interior really is a big step forward for mainstream MGs, though that might not be immediately obvious at first glance. You'd certainly struggle to perceive much of a want-one factor here. There are plenty of more charismatically designed cabins in this segment. And the monotone surroundings here really could benefit from a splash of colour. On the plus side though, the finishing and choice of materials is vastly better than what you'd find in an MG4, which in turn was vastly better than the ZS EV model this S5 replaces. True, the faux leather finishing doesn't look or feel much like the real thing. You don't have to look too far to find hard, scratchy plastics, and not everyone will like the faux carbon fibre dashboard trimming. But the soft touch faux suede around the gear selector looks nice, as do the metal accents and the fabric and faux leather branded upholstery you get with this trophy trim level. MG's also discontinued its love affair with shiny piano black plastic. Good. Through the silver-trimmed, faux leather-trimmed 3-spoke wheel, you view a 10.25-inch instrument display, which isn't quite at European brand standards of user-friendliness, but is less cluttered and better laid out than screens you get with rival Chinese manufacturers. There's a battery charge readout on the far left-hand side and a rather pointless percentage power on the far right. The display has a central digital speedo with a drive assist graphic to the left and a selectable readout section to the right. The latter can show trip data, tyre pressures, audio selection or nav instructions. Also better than the Chinese brand norm is the 12.8-inch central touchscreen, which has shortcut virtual buttons along its bottom frame for the surround camera, phone settings, car functions, music and navigation. Fortunately, you don't necessarily have to fish around for these while you're driving, because listening to the criticisms of people like us, and more importantly, its customers, MG has, for the European market only, added this row of physical buttons beneath this display. These make quite a difference to this monitor's ease of use, with smart metal finished round dials at either end, temperature to the left and audio volume to the right. As is the fashion, this monitor's home screen can be divided into customizable widget sections, quite a few in this case, for navigation, radio, climate, weather and app connect settings for the incorporated wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto systems. If you swipe left, there are more widget options for things like video, phone settings, a service maintenance section, and the various online services that, unfortunately, only come with this top trophy trim level for things like YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Amazon Music. Navigation is standard on all model variants, which is good, but the screen software can be a bit slow and laggy, which isn't. What else? Well, the positioning of this 6-way adjustable driver's seat is quite high set, and these front chairs unfortunately will have to do without lumbar support, but overall you get plenty of kit for the money. This trophy version, for instance, gets a 50-watt wireless phone charging pad next to the gear selector, and there's a reasonable amount of cabin storage space. That charging pad area has a phone-sized slot ahead of it, and unlike with Stellantis models in this segment, you get a properly sized glove box. MG's overlooked a sun visor ticket clip, but there are decently sized door bins and silver-trimmed cup holders. Plus, you get no fewer than 3 front USB ports, 2 USB-C slots in the deep-lidded bin between the seats, and a USB-A port on the rear view mirror. Time to take a look in the rear. Where the second row is reasonably spacious, and because there's no central transmission hump, a middle-seated occupant could fairly easily be squeezed in if necessary. There's plenty of headroom too. A couple of 6-foot adults will fit in quite comfortably. Overall, there isn't that much difference in the space you get back here compared to the room in the back of supposedly larger MG HS or S6 EV models from the class above. There are no backrest reclining or seat-based sliding functions though, but at least the large side windows give a great view out. MG provides an armrest with cup holders, not always a given in this class of car, plus a central USB-C port, overhead reading lights, seatback pockets and decently sized door bins. Out back is a 458-litre cargo area with an adjustable height boot floor. below which you'll have to store the charging cables because there's nowhere for them to go beneath the bonnet. Below the cargo area base is a shallow compartment for basic tools, hence the emblazoned lettering here. There are deep, recessed, netted stowage areas either side of the boot floor, plus you get bag hooks each side, a light on the left, and 4 tie-down points. For the carriage of longer items, you might hope for a ski hatch or a convenient 40-20-40 rear seatback split, but no, it's just the usual 60-40 arrangement, which when flat reveals up to 1,440 litres of luggage space. At the time of this test in autumn 2025, prices were pitched from £28,745 for the base SE version with the smaller standard range battery. An S5 with the larger long-range battery and SE spec cost £31,245 as we filmed, and an S5 long-range with top trophy spec like this one is around £33,745. In case you're wondering, none of those prices can be reduced by a government grant, nor is it likely to change given that MG is a Chinese brand. And that's a real problem for MG in the UK. What the grant has essentially done is eroded the price advantage this car would otherwise enjoy over key segment rivals that do qualify for the grant, principally cars like the Ford Puma Gen E, the Volkswagen ID3, the Cupra Born, the Skoda Elroq, the Renault 4 and the Vauxhall Mokka Electric. If you're shopping at the bottom of the S5 EV lineup, you'll find that the grant has made other potential more budget-orientated rivals like Citroen's EC3 Aircross and EC4, and possibly also Vauxhall's Frontera Electric, look significantly cheaper than this MG. Of course, MG's not alone in this kind of grant-induced difficulty. Segment rivals from other Chinese brands like the BYD Atto 2, the Omoda E5, Leapmotor B10 and JACU E5 have a similar issue, as do other popular contenders in this segment like the Kia EV3 and the Fiat 600e. At the time of our test, Chinese maker Geely had responded by putting a car sized and specified for the next segment up, its mid-sized EX5, on sale here for just £32,000, right in MGS5 territory. So it's a tough market that this car enters, and it's going to need a very strong level of sophistication to compete. So let's take a closer look at that now. Base SE spec gives you 17-inch Vector-style alloy wheels, full LED headlights, adaptive cruise control, keyless entry, roof rails and rear parking sensors with a reversing camera. Plus you get 5 driving modes and 4 regenerative braking modes. And there's vehicle-to-load charging, allowing you to power external devices like lights or laptops from the car's drive battery. Inside, there's a 10.25-inch HD full digital driver information display, automatic climate control and a 6-way adjustable driver's seat. Media stuff's taken care of by a 12.8-inch HD infotainment touchscreen, which has navigation, a 4-speaker audio system and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. To that tally, this top trophy trim upgrades you to 18-inch rotor-style alloy wheels and includes a 360-degree parking camera, a smart electric tailgate, rain-sensing wipers and rear privacy glass. Inside with trophy trim, there's heat for the front seats and steering wheel, plus you get part leather upholstery, a wireless phone charger, rear reading lights and an upgraded 6-speaker audio system. Extra media features include a mobile phone Bluetooth key and online services for the centre screen like weather, live traffic, YouTube, Spotify and TikTok. Across the S5 range, there's also the usual very complete portfolio of standard MG Pilot advanced driver assist systems, including active emergency braking with pedestrian and bicycle detection, and lane keep assist with lane departure warning and emergency lane keeping. You also get traffic jam assist, which will virtually drive your S5 for you in urban queues, and blind spot detection, lane change assist, rear cross traffic alert, intelligent high beam assist, driver attention alert, forward and rear collision warning, intelligent speed limit assist and door opening warning. It all justifies a 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating. During testing, the S5 managed a 90% adult occupant protection score, an 82% score for child occupant and vulnerable road user protection, and a 78% score for safety assist features. If any of those assist systems start to irritate, you can set up a specific personal mode that can switch off some or all of them at the touch of a button. But you'll need to do that every time you start the car because, as usual with most modern cars, they all reactivate. Earlier we gave you the driving range figures: 211 miles for an SE 49 kilowatt-hour model and 298 miles for an SE long-range 64 kilowatt-hour version. It's 288 miles for this trophy 64 kilowatt-hour top variant. To achieve these figures, you'll obviously have to regularly select the provided eco driving mode and get familiar with the fiercest regenerative braking setting. We'd be concerned that the claimed range figures would suffer a bit in really cold weather because the S5 EV isn't offered with a heat pump even as an option. If you're running really low of charge, there's a screen selectable energy saving mode that tunes everything for maximum frugality until you can get to a charger. You can monitor your frugality via a provided energy consumption menu in the centre screen's battery section, which graphically illustrates the amount of energy you've used over the last 25, 50 or 100 miles and shows you how it's been distributed to power and climate sources. On to charging. The 64 kilowatt-hour variant that most will want accepts rates of 135 kilowatts. At a 150 kilowatt DC rapid charger, that's enough to replenish the battery from 10 to 80% in 26 minutes. The charging rate is just 120 kilowatts for the 49 kilowatt-hour battery, which DC charges from 10 to 80% in 24 minutes. AC charging from a home 7.4 kilowatt wall box will take 11.5 hours with the 64 kilowatt-hour models, or 8.5 hours with the 49 kilowatt-hour version. If you were able to charge this 64 kilowatt-hour model with a 3-phase 11 kilowatt AC supply, you could reduce the time for full battery replenishment to 6 hours and 45 minutes. The centre screen's battery section mentioned earlier has a vehicle battery usage graphic and a charging scheduler, plus options to select intelligent battery heating and set charging limits and a low battery temperature reminder. All versions of this MG come with an impressive 7-year, 80,000 mile warranty as standard, which is better than most rival brands can offer, though they do better this MG when it comes to roadside assistance, which here runs out after a year. MG's full warranty isn't the only 7-year package available in this segment. Rival Kia offers a 7-year, 100,000 mile package, but MG still reckons its deal is preferable because it's backed by full factory support throughout, whereas direct manufacturer support for rival warranties declines the longer they go on. In many cases, they don't go on too long. The warranty is fully transferable to future owners. Additionally, there's a 6-year factory warranty against rust, while a year's breakdown cover is also part of the deal. And the usual 8-year or 100,000 mile EV battery warranty guarantees the battery up to 70% of original charge capacity. At dealers, a full digital service record of checks and maintenance provides the customer with complete transparency and full access to the service history of their vehicle. There's a section of the centre screen to oversee the car's servicing requirements. Garage visits are required every year or 15,000 miles, whichever comes first. And you'll be offered a range of MG servicing plans to spread the cost of maintenance for up to 7 years. Insurance groupings start at Group 29 for the entry-level SE version. It's Group 34 for both the SE long range and Trophy long range variants. Depreciation after 3 years or 36,000 miles is predicted at 37%, which isn't great. And as usual with EVs, you'll have a low benefit in kind tax rating, 3% as we filmed until spring 2026. The S5 feels more than a generation on from its ZS EV predecessor. In fact, this is without doubt the best mainstream MG model we've seen to date. With the MG4 hatch, the brand proved that in certain ways it could compete head-on with established competition. With this S5, we've a car that can do that in almost every way, and most people could swap into one from a more familiar model in this segment without a trace of regret. That's a huge step forward for MG. But this improvement is very necessary to justify pricing that's now pretty much on a par with that of the mainstream manufacturers, though it's still easy to pay much more in this segment. And this S5 EV's value proposition remains strong once you take standard spec into account. What this car can't do is offer as much charisma and want one factor as you might like. With the Cyberster sports car, MG's shown that it can deliver this, and for future mainstream sales progress, it will need to. For the time being, though, the S5 is very much a step in the right direction.